information, mental process. So one worker Tim van Gelder from the Department of Philosophy in Melbourne, University of Melbourne, he says, in short, the contemporary mind-body debate suffers from chronic failure to solve its most basic problems, a dearth of major new ideas, much going round in circles, outbreaks of anomaly and despair, and suffocation by the steely grip of scholasticism. In other words, it's really not working. Okay, we don't want to put forward gap theology, what Dawkins calls gap theology. If there's a problem, a temporary problem for physical scientists, then religious people jump in and say, ha ha, God did it. Okay, we won't do that. But in any case, we can note that there's a serious difficulty in explaining. There's two basic theories about mind. One is, you could call it the ghost in the machine. The idea is that mind is not really a separate entity or a separate element, but it appears when nervous systems become complex enough. In other words, matter comes together, creates living bodies, which are just physical machines. And when the physical bodies become complex, then they produce consciousness. That consciousness is just like a subjective experience, whatever that would be in a physical theory. It can't actually do anything. In other words, we, the ghost in the machine, we're sitting in the body and we think we're doing things, but actually the body is acting completely automatically. It's only the physical laws which are moving. Just like Crick said, that his idea is that your sense of personal identity, your sense of free will, is just the activity of nerve cells and their associated molecules. So it's just machines acting, but I think that I'm doing it. Like a kid in the back seat, Dad's driving the car and the kid's got the toy steering wheel, and you think, yes, I'm moving the car. So according to this theory, we're like this. Consciousness thinks that it's steering the body, but actually it's not really doing anything at all. It's just there. It's a ghost in the machine. So according to this idea, ghost in the machine, brain states produce mental phenomena. What we think of as, or what we experience as our thinking, feeling, and willing, and so on, it's simply a product of brain states. But actually, neurophysiology shows that it's exactly the opposite. It's intention of the mind which produces brain states. So, for example, they can measure the flow of blood in a particular area of the brain, and when the subject concentrates in a particular way, then the blood flows to that particular part of the brain. In other words, the brain states, physically measurable brain states, are caused by a mental intention and not the other way around. So this theory doesn't fly at all. The other theory is called the identity theory, and this states that brain states on the one side, things that we can physically measure, and our experience on the other hand, they're actually identical. It's not that one is caused by the other or the other is caused by the one, but they're both actually identical, but they're seen in two different ways, like particles or wave aspects of matter. So, but here again, we're running up against the explanatory gap, because they're saying that brain states are identical with experience, but actually there's an explanatory gap. There's a serious difference between a brain state, which we experience as something outside ourselves, and a subjective experience. We have subjective experience of the brain states that we measure. So actually this doesn't really explain anything. It doesn't explain how, in what way brain states are identical with conscious experience. It's just a faith. So both of these ideas actually don't hold true. They don't actually bring us forward in explaining. There's another problem here. Scientism, the doctrine of scientism, says that really there's no such thing as free will. We think that we're doing something, but we're not really doing it. That means there's no responsibility. There's no initiative. On the one hand, there's no basis for society in that case, because society is based on responsibility, starting with toilet training. You have to take responsibility for your actions. But then there's no responsibility in science either. It means that the scientist is not responsible for his great discoveries, so why should we reward him? Why should we attribute any virtue to a scientist because he's just acting as a machine? In fact, why should we even listen to him? Because when he talks, it's just mechanical. It could be just babble. Why listen to the scientists talking rather than the leaves in the tree or the frogs in the pond? Because it's the same thing, it's just mechanical interactions going on. So ultimately, this idea that the mind is just produced by the brain, everything's completely automatic, it self-invalidates, it contradicts itself.